Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Clinic Gym Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Satterlee, and it is my pleasure today to be joined by Dr. John Jaquish. Dr. John, how are you?
I'm super. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to have you. I see you on Facebook all the time, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have as well. But you are the developer of the X3, what do you call it? I don't want to say weightlifting.
You can say fitness system. It's certainly not weightlifting, because the name of my book is Weightlifting is a Waste of Time.
I know, which is, I can only imagine how the rating spike will be during this episode, because you, my friend, are a magnet for comments on Facebook. I have never seen anybody get such wonderful comments from people who, it's always great because you are a researcher, like in your DNA. And so you'll present a great argument about like, hey, this study said this, and this study said this, and this study said this. And you essentially you get the response of, yeah, but still.
Like, exactly. Yeah. All the time. And my favorite study in the world is the Dunning-Kruger 1999. I'm sure you're very aware of this. Pretty much says the dumber the person is, the more they believe they have all the answers.
Yeah.
So the more confident they are in their own abilities. So this is why people of low intelligence are not allowed in the military, because they'll shoot themselves in the foot, or they'll drive right off a cliff, or whatever. They're just too dumb.
But they won't realize as they're going off the cliff, they won't realize, or they won't deviate from the fact of maybe that was not the right turn. No, this is where I'm supposed to go.
No, that's it. Right. So, that's what Dunning-Kruger says. And when you look at the internet, also some of the like you can look at politics, and it's also like, and we don't have to even get political. The least informed people are pushing the strongest opinions. And whereas, like let's talk about, vaccines just for a second, not speaking on the merits or demerits. But if you look to a medical professional, they'll usually give you some upsides and some downsides for each one of these things. And it's not a crystal clear or easy decision for anyone. And some of these things are just a necessary evil at times. Like we've gotten rid of a lot of things like polio and measles and mumps. Why? Well, because of vaccines. So let's not forget some of the deadliest things have been stopped, but that doesn't mean that all protocols and all procedures and are the right thing to do, or mandates or whatever. These are bigger conversations. But the people with the black and white opinions, chances are you shouldn't listen to them, because they have the least amount of information, and they are 100% committed to one side or the other.
Yeah, I love it. I agree. One of my favorite quotes is, the most scientific answer to any question is, it depends. The interpretation of data is so important, not just the actual data. Right. Anyways, but that's what I have appreciated about you when I see you on Facebook. Although there are people who all the time are giving their baseless but yet strong opinion to you, you typically counteract with like, here's a study, and you cite every single piece of essentially your opinion, which I would say is an expert opinion versus a street level thug opinion.
I try never to show my opinion. I'm like, this is what the research says. Yeah. They're like, well, what are your feelings on? I'm like, I don't have any feelings on anything. Here's like the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, summarizes 250 different studies. No one's ever caught a mistake. Not one. So, I put all those studies together and created a story looking at human physiology and how we go about triggering changes in the body. And it just so happens that the reason fitness is the most failed human endeavor of all time. And I backed that statement up in the book. Like the leanest 1%, top 1 percentile of males is just under 11% body fat. That's pathetic. Like 11% body fat, I'd call like, you're just sort of fit. Like that's not fit. That's all, you're getting there. Yeah. Like you're close. You're not obese. So you're body fat.
Yeah. But I was looking recently, the top, when people say like the top 1% income earner, I think it's like 428,000 a year. But what you're saying is when you compare that to say like a billionaire,
right?
428,000 is nothing, right? And so, but it's still considered the top 1%. So
yeah,
it's interesting. So going back to your story, so you essentially are a researcher, and your entire product line and your book and everything came out of research itself. Can we go back and kind of go through your story a little bit? So how did, like, when you started out researching, what the heck were you looking for?
Well, so I was looking for an answer to osteoporosis. So my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis a little over 10 years ago. And that just means low bone density for those who don't follow that. So her bone density was low, and she could have a fragility fracture. So she looked at some of the statistics. You have a 50% chance of death after the age of 50 within 1 year of a hip fracture.
Right.
50% chance of death. So it's a complication that's going to take you out, not the fracture itself. But she was terrified.
Yeah, out of the bathtub and kaboosh, right? Fall on your bathroom floor and it's over.
That's right.
Yeah.
So and so she was terrified, and I said, Mom, like, let me look into this, because I asked her about the pharmaceutical options, and she said, well, they all have side effects, and I don't like those side effects. And I read the same data, and I said, yeah, I don't really want this for you either. But, and at the time, this was before I had even started my PhD. So I was just doing software sales at the time, B2B software sales. So relationship management industry sort of stuff. And I was very much enjoying doing that. And so then as I researched it, I told my mother, like, I think the answer to this thing is obvious. Like, high impact activity builds bone density in children. Now, I'm not going to have you go out for the gymnastics team, because she was in her 70s at the time. So none of that. But I'm going to develop a series of medical devices that are going to emulate high impact forces. So you'll be able to engage the body in very specific positions so that you can get the benefit of high impact without the risks. And so she said, hey, sounds great. Like, she didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. Built a couple of prototypes, started testing with myself first to make sure it was safe for my mom, then started testing with my mom. Within 18 months, she had the bones of a 30-year-old.
Wow.
Total, that's peak bone mass. That's the best it gets in your life. So she went to a T-score of almost 0, which is totally normal bone. And she was in her 70s. Now, the bone that is built via this process lasts 30 years in the body. So she did it into her 80s. So she figures she'll have healthy bone density till she gets about 110. And, I told her,
hopefully you'll have your next invention.
Say it again?
I said, when she hits 110, you'll luckily have your next invention. So she'll be fine.
Something like that. Yeah. So she's just not worried about her bone density anymore. It's strong. And now she's working on her muscular strength with my next product. And with the next product came out of the first one. Because as I saw how much force humans were capable of creating in these impact-ready positions. So our first clinical trial type study was done in London. University of East London was where the researchers are from, and an area called Stratford, if anybody's been to East London. Stratford Village Surgery is where the therapy took place. And so it was a great study, and immediately the people that were involved were asking me, like, I participated in the study from the methods section only, basically teaching the principal investigator and other technicians how to use the device correctly with the subjects. So, like, you got to make sure you're using it right.
Sure.
So that was what I was there for. So I couldn't participate in any other part of the study because of conflicts of interest. So then, as we were doing the study, like, everyone was amazed at how much force these women so we focused on women because they're much more likely to have osteoporosis. They were all postmenopausal. Some of them were osteopenic or full-blown osteoporosis, but refusal to take the medication. But these women had never worked out before. And some of them were pushing 6, 7, even 8 times their body weight with their lower extremities. Well, the strongest people in the world don't look at that. And these women had never exercised. And this was 6 months into the therapy. So now, doesn't mean that they're the strongest people in the world all of a sudden, but it does mean that they were capable of creating so much forces that we never encounter outside of high impact. Mm-hmm. So, and as I'm looking at the data, like these women were so capable, and it was allowed by this device, by the OsteoStrong devices. Now, OsteoStrong is in 9 different countries, 160 locations. And so like, this was my first invention, OsteoStrong. And then so I immediately started working on my second invention, which was some way to deliver this kind of force in a more muscular type training experience. Mm-hmm. Because I realized, wow, like I'm looking at the data, like weightlifting is a waste of time. Like if this is true, and I knew it was because I was watching it happen right in front of me, I'm like, I have unique data here. I have data that would indicate that we're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Let me go back real quick. I just want to touch on a couple points here because, I mean, so number one, so you started out looking for osteoporosis and basically you come up with what is now known as the OsteoStrong product.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure early on was a bunch of, duct tape and zip ties, but you kind of refined it.
Yes, it sure was. It was ugly.
Yeah. When I'm just picturing, you have these postmenopausal women in their 6th, 7th, 8th decade of life using this product. When you were seeing the force numbers come back, I mean, whoever is doing your stats had to look at it and go, this is obviously incorrect, right? I mean, like on its face, it would seem incorrect.
Fortunately, while we were running the study, the hospital administrators were all just using it as a therapy intervention.
Okay.
And so all of them did double DEXA scans and they saw their bone density going up.
Wow.
So they knew it was working.
Yeah.
Like before I got there, they were playing with it for a couple months and they're like, this thing is a complete miracle. Like, and so there's no side effects to it.
Yeah. So going to the bone density, I mean, as you said, like in youth, bone density increases a lot of times due to high impact, right? I mean, jumping over fences, climbing trees, falling, all the impact things, which are inherently not the best way to train your 60-year-old or 70-year-old mother, right?
Correct.
And so what was the big kickover on the OsteoStrong product? Was it that you're like, we just have to do this long enough, or nobody's even getting close to the top end of force production? What was the, I don't know what you want to call it, the clarifying factor, that fundamental principle that you realized everybody had been off base with?
So they do a study with gymnasts, and gymnasts would apply sometimes 10 times their body weight to their lower extremities. And so then they'd look at this and then come out with a recommendation that says physical activity is good for bone health. Now, I don't think there is a medical recommendation that is more lacking. And I have this expression, I say this all the time. As far as I know, I made it up, but maybe somebody else said it before me. Oversimplification is another word for wrong. We live in a time where everybody wants their nutrition advice, workout advice, all summarized into a sentence fragment meme. And like only a really unintelligent person should be satisfied by that, because obviously the human body is a little more complicated than a meme. Like a physician didn't memorize 4 or 5 memes and say, okay, I'm ready for board certification. In fact, like, they look at some of the fitness and health memes and they're like just disgusted. Like, that is not how it works at all. And so, so it was a little challenging when realizing that everything we were doing was wrong. And I had a better answer. Now, bone density was a little different because who's in charge of your bone density? Usually your orthopedist, your general practitioner or your chiropractor. In fact, chiropractors deal more with bone than any other type of medical professional. Mm-hmm. So chiropractors, they understand the work of Dr. Julius Wolf 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's well documented in every chiropractic textbook. Apply axial force to bone, force along the axis, and you can trigger a change. So, at first there was a lot of frustration and confusion as to were these loads safe? Well, yeah, they are. People get them on high impact, but we're delivering based on comfort. So somebody self-applies the force, sort of like you can't squeeze a fist hard enough to break your own finger. Your own nervous system will stop you. And that's how the OsteoStrong devices worked. It was based on voluntary recruitment of muscular tissue to create the compressive forces into the bone mass. So somebody can't do it wrong if they're following the instructions and moving in a slow and controlled manner. Now, of course, there always is somebody who uses it wrong. I mean, this might be 1 out of 100 people who try and hammer into the movements or something like that. And they're not, the therapy is called impact emulation. That's not emulating impact. That's just impact.
Okay. So, well, let's dive into that impact thing. I've heard you use the term that these subjects could sustain a lot of force in impact ready positions.
Yeah.
Can you help define that so people understand where you're coming from? Because I don't want to overlook that fact. Because when they hear oh yeah, you can put critical. 10 times body weight through this, it's position dependent, I would guess.
So if you trip and fall and you have the time to react, because you will, nobody just falls flat on their face and goes, oh, I forgot to put my hands in front of me. So if you have the time to react, you'll put your hands in front of you. You'll have a 120-degree angle between the upper and lower arm. The back of the hand will be in line with the clavicle. This is everyone. This is children. This is elderly people. This is NFL players, high school students. Absolutely everybody does exactly the same thing to absorb high impact forces. And this is in all movements of the body. Same position.
So that's not by chance. That is deep within the coils of our DNA, the helix of our DNA.
That's right. That's right. We know as soon as you start moving, we know where our most powerful position is. Same thing when you jump off you see a little kid jump off a chair. They land and they look an awful lot like gymnasts when gymnasts land. Now, we lose landing biomechanics as we get a little bit older, especially if you're not training to do that. So that's part of the reason why we lose bone density, because we can't, generally after 30, you're unable to apply any force through your body with high impact. In fact, there's an iPhone app that can test you. It's called Fracture Proof.
Huh.
You're getting me confused. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this app. I mean, there are only 100,000 apps, but
right.
What does it do? Just use the accelerometers to kind of.
Yeah. It only works for Apple because the accelerometers are really low quality in Samsung products.
Okay.
So, if you have an iPhone, you can download the app and it'll tell you if you're able to jump and land.
Mm-hmm.
And you're at a high enough velocity when you hit the ground that you're able to trigger bone density growth or not.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's all right. You can have it on your phone and just have somebody hold the phone on their thigh and see where they are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to dive into the product development here, because I think that's an interesting part, and that's I think that's where a lot of the focus is for people, because they see the product, the X3 fitness system on Facebook or Instagram. But the reason I want to talk about the research is it's always funny when the research guides the development, especially. So, for example, I'm a chiropractor, and the current research says that many, in fact, most people, asymptomatic people, never having low back pain, after their 30th birthday, likely have a disc bulge, herniation, or protrusion, and it might be normal course of business. It might be just normal course of having a spine. That is not accepted by large swaths of the population, and they freak out and think, oh no, there's a finding, therefore there's a problem. And it's really good research. It's been done well, it's been verified, and yet it's such a hard idea for people to grab onto. Your product, it seems on the internet, it's a difficult idea to grasp and say like, okay, this is the most effective way to build a bone density, but along with building bone density, you can't help but build muscle as well, right?
Yeah.
And
you have a muscular effect. The muscular effect with OsteoStrong is more neurological. It's more training the body to fire more. So for explosiveness, it's great. For speed, like every sprinter I've ever met has said, I use this for 3 months and fastest of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody speed related, fighters, same thing. Now they get a little bit of the same effect with X3 also, the more strength focused product, but X3, the weight doesn't go high enough to trigger bone density growth.
Okay.
So like I caution people, don't think they're the same thing. They're the same principle, but applied differently.
Okay. Well, let's dive in a little bit to X3. So when you kind of looked at this research, what guided you to develop X3 for the more muscular, rather than the neurological stimulation, more of the muscular development side?
So I had always been into fitness. I played rugby in undergrad, played a little bit of semi-pro after that. And just as athletic as I could be, I liked being in shape, though when I look back, like I really wasn't. I was a little bit better than average. And it was a shame because I was completely into it and completely committed to it. So 20 years of weightlifting, I told you before the show started, like when I took my shirt off at the beach, people would be like, oh, you work out. But if I put a shirt on, I was 190 pounds, 16% body fat. Like nobody had ever told me, oh, you're in pretty good shape. Like never. Like I said, only at the beach, maybe one or two people were like, oh yeah, you've been working out. Yeah, good job. But now, after turning 40, in 2 years, I put on 45 pounds of muscle and much leaner. Lost. What was I? No, I'm sorry. I was 20% body fat. The 16 number is how many pounds of body fat I lost. So I lost 16 pounds of body fat, gained 45 pounds of muscle. So now and I've done even more than that since then. But that was just the first 2 years. So now I walk into a grocery store and people stop me and ask me if I play in the NFL or like who I am or like, am I an MMA fighter or can they watch my fights? And they're strange questions because at first it's like, hey, where can I see your fights? And I'm like, what? Yeah. You're muted still.
It's not a bad problem to have that you're getting mistaken for a professional athlete. Like there are worse things that can go on in life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey, at least they're not confusing me for some serial killer or something.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But were you
fantastic?
Sorry, were you the first test subject when you found this research and kind of compiled it into? I think you said there are about over 200 or 250 articles that you incorporated in the book.
Yeah.
But as you put these into application, did you do it first with yourself? Did you?
Yep.
How'd that kind of happen?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was working with a young, incredibly brilliant, talented guy, Henry Alkire. He's the co-author on the book, but this was years before that. So I kind of described what I wanted and here's just something I want to try out. And this isn't exactly where we are in physical medicine. This is not another bone density device. This is something for muscularity. And yeah, I think some of the guys I was working with at the time in my company, Jaquish Biomedical, they were like, fitness, really? Like, we don't want to go there. And yeah, I mean, it's a really lousy industry full of complete idiots. The lack of intelligence in fitness is like just mind. Yeah. I mean, it's like it's like some of the more recent White House briefings where I feel like some people like can't find Afghanistan on a map. Like I'm just like, wow, like you guys really don't know what's going on. And like some of the people I've been on some podcasts, so they got me on the podcast because they wanted to insult me. And so I'm talking about some of the research.
That's got to feel good. Hey, come on down. We're just we can insult you to your face.
You know what? I'm a controversial character. That's the life I chose. So they want to rattle my cage. I'm going to rattle theirs back. The funny thing, I asked some of these people some questions. They don't even understand the words they're using. Like they cannot define. Like if I say like hypoxia or something like that. And they'll kind of run with the word, and I can tell by the way they're using it, they have no clue what it is. Or they're like trying to like Google it while they're on the podcast with me, and like, whoa, like you really didn't do shit to prepare for this, did you?
Yeah.
And I think they thought just by saying, okay, so I think your product is bullshit, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's not, and here's why, and they don't have any retort.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to get to the product and the method because, I think that's something that's often misunderstood in fitness too. Like people, often say, oh, he's a kettlebell guy or he's a whatever. And I always like retracted that thought. Like, like you're talking about an implement, talking about gravitational pull. Like, sure, the handle is shaped different, but I don't understand why being a quote unquote kettlebell guy or a cable guy or whatever, it's like, I just don't understand their organizational structure, I guess. But going back to your thing about fitness, I mean, I would imagine in like, say, if you want to become a fighter pilot, there's no genetic, you're not born with a genetic ability to be a fighter pilot. Like it's purely through training and, learning and organizational information. One of the problems in fitness is the genetics can play a large role as to how good you look with your shirt off.
Sure.
And in doing so, you can get a lot of, what would you call that? Confirmation bias that you're on the right path, right? Sure. Like whenever you see these jokers that are like, oh, I do this and that. It's like, yeah, you could eat a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts a day and be fine. Like, so yeah, it doesn't filter out from that.
Yeah. There's the biggest genetic determining factor. A lot of people think it's just hormonal. It's not. In fact, most people have relatively similar hormones, unless they're dysfunctional. For that, there's like replacement therapies. But the biggest genetic difference is tendon layout. So some people have like an insertion point where their pectorals insert on the humerus, which is a floating attachment point, whereas the other end is on the sternum. Well, that never changes. For everybody, it's attached to the sternum. But the other end, it could be at the top of the humerus or the bottom of the humerus or anywhere in between. And the lower the attachment point, the closer to the elbow it is, the more leverage somebody has.
This is why, like, chimpanzees have incredible force production, right?
That's right. Yeah. They have very different tendon layouts. And there are some humans who have what you call a mutation, a different tendon pattern. And typically these are the guys in the NFL. Yeah. These are the guys who are just born to be strong. And it doesn't seem to matter what they do. And then other people can lift weight, like me, can lift weights for 20 years and get basically nothing out of it. I maybe put 5 pounds on in 20 years. And then the rest, I thought I was, gaining more, but it turns out I was just fatter. I just kept getting fatter and fatter. And you think, oh yeah, I put on some muscle and maybe a little bit of body fat. No, it was all body fat. So, and that's the cycle that most lifters go through because they don't want to come to grips with the fact that they're just wasting their time. They're not getting anything out of it. And so, you justify the usage of your time if you feel you don't know what else to do.
Right. And it's hard to filter the effects of weightlifting because a lot of people, there's maybe the social aspect of it that, if you're hanging with your best buddies and you guys are swapping who's lifting at what time, there's a a therapeutic social effect of just being around people. And then just being physically active makes you feel, I don't want to say feel, like emotionally better. And I think our human, our the way we're built, it responds positively to moving weight and struggling against an object and whatever. And in daily life as Americans, we typically would get that. So if you peel those layers off to just say, like, are you gaining muscle? It's hard for people to strip away that information.
Correct.
But you're specifically intent on, are you gaining muscle? Like, forget all these other factors about how good it feels or how many people you're around or how many girls looked at you or stared at you and how, how long you're in the gym. How
you scream when you lift, or how much noise you make when you drop the weight on the ground like a fucking loser.
Right. Just, did you gain muscle? And so what you're saying is, for 20 years, you spent a lot of time doing a lot of things that in the end did not gain muscle. A lot of girls might have talked to you. You might have enjoyed yourself quite a bit. You might have spent a lot of happy hours in the gym. You might have looked good with
a pump and thought like, oh, look at me grow. Yeah, not happening. And it's because of this tendon layout issue. 23% of people, no matter what they do with weights, will never have any protein synthesis at all.
So a quarter of the population, one out of every four.
Quarter of the population, no matter what they do, will never build anything. And the rest of the people build very little, or they build it just when they are beginners. Because obviously, the more stronger you get, the heavier the weights you're lifting, the more cumulative tendon and ligament damage you're doing. So at some point, the sort of injuries are rising and the strength gains start to slow down. And then when those two lines kind of cross each other, that you're never making progress, because your own neural inhibition, your own nervous system is shutting your muscles down, so you can't contract them hard enough to create more damage. So now you're in chronic pain, and you're, whatever sort of level of performance you're at, and you're never moving forward from there.
Wow.
Unless
that has
completely changed what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we're a little short on time today, but I would love to dive into that, because so many of the listeners here have patients that are in chronic pain. And, I think we all see, I think that the core love of this group is adding in exercise, because we see the long-term effects of that. You have people that are in, I'm an example. I got treated every which way from Sunday by dry needling, chiropractic, physical therapy, manipulation, mobilization, stretching, all these things. I could never get my back to be under a 2 out of 10 pain.
Yeah.
And then I did a series of exercises.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm guessing you're at a 0 now.
Yeah. And when my back hurts, I now have trained myself to like there's a thought, oh, I want to ice, I want to stretch, I want to relax. And it's like, no, grab some weight and move it in the, like for me, rear foot elevated split squats and Turkish get-ups are better than Advil at getting rid of back pain. Like those two, I've just found over trial and error, those things really work for me.
Yep.
And I think that this group is definitely interested in that. So if you have time, I'm just saying right now, I'd like to put a pin in it and have another conversation specific about chronic pain.
Absolutely.
But for those who are already interested, and they're hearing, obviously, that you know what the hell you're doing, you're informed by the research, where can people find more information about you and your products if they're interested?
I created a separate landing page just so I'm easy to find. My last name is a little tricky to spell. Yeah. So just go to drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com, and you can find my Instagram. I do the most on Instagram, but links to Facebook and YouTube also. I just prefer the platform on Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's easy. It's conducive to sharing great information. It's not conducive to trolling and other jealous idiot type behavior.
Twitter is a little troll heavy, but
I don't even have a Twitter account.
Good. In the final few minutes here, because I want to be respectful of your time.
Thank you.
I know you developed the X3 fitness system, which is to simplify this, a shortened barbell and proprietary bands essentially that are producing the resistance.
Right.
And forgive me, I'm going to use my own fitness language applied to your system, and I don't want to offend you. I'm just, trying to just simplify this.
Go for it.
But it's a stiff bar and bands that attach, and then it looks like there's also a platform that's included. When you develop that, there's the system itself, and then I'm guessing there's the method of which you teach people or coach people to use the system. And I think one mistake people might do, I have bands and barbells at my gym. And it's like, right, I have pots and pans in my kitchen. I'm not a chef. Like,
right. Right.
So,
and also, it's not a restaurant. Yeah.
So what did you...
so bands by themselves are worthless because once, there's no getting away from heavy. The people who train light, their days of gaining ended a long time ago, and they're just in a repeat pattern where they may be able to maintain, but you're not getting anything out of just bands.
Okay.
And it's just because if you want to gain muscle, there's no getting away from heavy. And the heavier you go, the more stable your smaller joints need to be, the wrists and the ankles. So the interface points are hands and our feet. We do everything with our hands and our feet. I suppose stacking weight on the back of your neck when you do a back squat is something that people do. I think that's not very smart. When's the last time you got a heavy suitcase and you decided to carry it around on the back of your neck?
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we're chiropractors. We need people to sling weight on their back. So let's move past that point.
Okay. Yeah. Chiropractors, you say that. So I wanted to, basically it's we got to find a way to use variable resistance, but and it's got to be compact and easy to use. But also there's no justification for weight itself. Because a lot of the studies that I referenced, there was a portion that's heavy weight, and then there's some bands attached to the barbell with the weight, except your central nervous system doesn't know the difference between iron and latex. It knows what force you're producing. So, and also two of the studies that I reference talk about the greater proportionate variance. So the higher the change from weak range to strong range, the better you're going to do and the more muscle you're going to build. So, we use a 5-to-1 ratio of weak range to strong range, whereas most band training type programs, they might use X versus 1.2X, where we're using X versus 5X. So it's just much more in line with the clinical findings, and the results are there. We have 40 professional athletes using it. The Miami Heat even endorsed the book. The endorsement's right on the back. We had a NASA scientist endorse it, Dr. Sean Baker, who's a world record deadlift holder. There's the success.
Bill Ferran gave his support to it in Bill Ferran's book, High Performance Sports Conditioning, I think it's called. Is the first book I remember reading that I was like, this is what I want to pursue. And that led to his book led to my career. So when he supported this, I was like, all right, this is different. Bill Ferran he's at a point in his career, he doesn't need to screw around with, low level crap.
No, he's all about it. They basically don't weight train. They do basketball drills, of course, but they just use X3.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you say your neurological system doesn't know the difference. The strongest human I've ever seen in my life in college was a kid from Montana who never had seen or lifted a weight until he played football for Montana State University. He just was from a small town, but he lifted hay bales, he lifted cattle, he lifted pipes, he lifted tractor tires, he lifted everything that weighs a lot and moved it. And that kid went into the weight room and I think hit a 500-pound back squat in within his first 4 months. And this is somebody who he admitted, never ever went into a weight room before that point in his life. And so it's how can his neurological system not know what these weights are and at the same time move a lot of them? It's because it's just stimuli, right?
Yeah.
Just stimuli.
Weights, there's no magic to weights at all.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. And so with variable resistance, we're going to do better. And that's the premise of the book. Now, I do get a lot of criticism that the book is just sort of a marketing vehicle for the product. I think the book is more like a rationale as to why the product was created, or why I viewed weight training as a waste of time, and then went in a direction to create something better. So, I mean, does it talk about the products I developed? Yeah. So, I'm not apologizing for that. That's the way it is.
All right. Last question, just because, again, I want to respect your time. I see on a lot of the things you post on Instagram and in the book that you talk about basically your own personal workout is about 10 minutes long.
That's right.
Now, again, when we talk about, like, to a lot of people, that's, you're defying gravity, right? You're taking electricity to the center of the jungle. Like what's going on here?
Yeah.
Is that the same for like a gaining method, or is that like a maintenance dose?
Well, that's the gaining method. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't like focusing necessarily on the fact that it's a short workout, because a lot of things, I mean, didn't we have like 4-minute abs or something?
Yeah.
I mean, like, just abbreviating a workout is often just a shitty, hurried workout, which is just as shitty as the not hurried workout. And somebody will not have abs.
A crappy 45-minute workout and shove it into a crappier 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. So the objective was not to make it quick. The objective was to fatigue the body with the absolute greatest amount of force. So like when I do a chest press, I'm using 550 pounds at the top of the movement, and I might hit that 20 times. Okay. But then the middle of the movement, it's only 300 pounds. So I might hit that another 4 or 5 times after I cannot achieve the full range repetition. So we do what's called diminishing range. So we diminish the range until you can't move anymore.
So it's much like
the bar is to your body, the lower the weight.
It's like watching 1 minute of TV goes by quick, but 1 minute of Al Qaeda torturing you probably goes by a whole lot slower. You're more in the second camp.
Yeah. It definitely feels longer than it's a long 10 minutes. But
so that 10 minutes you're not ending it going. Yeah, you're not ending it going, well, I wish it would have been 20. Like if you ended at 8, that might have been all you had for the day. Tap it out.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at this point,
if you feel like you can do a second, like it's 1 set per exercise. If you feel like you can do a second set, you didn't do it right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You cut it short before you were to really. Yeah. Because it's absolute fatigue in all ranges of motion, something you cannot do with a weight ever. So, yeah.
I remember I'm not to say this is the same, but I remember when I was young reading, I don't know if you read like Milo and Iron Mind and all those, weightlifting products. I competed in Olympic weightlifting in college. And one summer I did the 6-week 20 rep squat challenge. You just do one set of 20 back squats every day and drank a gallon of milk, which if you're lactose sensitive, it's a horrible combination. But for my 19 or 20-year-old body, that 20 reps of squats was crushing. I mean, the first 7 don't, like, you can do them all, but like the last 3, each one feels like an event, Yep. And I saw such huge change in that. I can only imagine, and that's with, at the top of a squat, you get a little bit of a break because you can just stack yourself up and there's not any muscle pull, right? There's no load on your muscle tendons, but as soon as you break your knees and you start going back down again, it's just an event. And I have a feeling like yours is pretty close to that, because just from watching the videos I've seen online, there ain't no break positions in your 10 minutes.
Nope.
Yeah, there's no free lunch. So, well, this is incredibly interesting, John, and I really appreciate you coming on today. I do need to wrap this up. So once again, if people want to find out more information about your products and your research and you in general, where can they go to find more info?
Just drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com.
Awesome. All right. And so Dr. John Jaquish, the developer of the X3 fitness system, along with some other pretty cool stuff. And we didn't even touch on your supplements and some other things that, oh, by the way, that you just happen to develop along the way. So
yeah. There's a couple other things. There's when you get to drj.com, you can click on superior exercise or superior nutrition, and you can read about everything.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Cool.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the time today, Dr. Jaquish, and I'm very interested in diving into your product here and your book. And people can reach out to it's spelled out Dr. DOCTORJ.com. Find out all the information. And on behalf of Dr. John Jaquish, this is Dr. Josh Satterlee saying, go out there, maximize your license, and live the life you dream of. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there, here, or anywhere to get more videos just like this. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.